From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. We were talking recently about reliable news sources, and then more generally, who you go to and who you decide to believe. Who can you trust? And it's not always easy. It's sometimes a little tricky. There's some trial and error. You got to check out sources. Over time, it's not that difficult to figure it out. I mean, we can't rely solely on our own intuition. It's a nice source, I guess, but it's not the only one. We have to have some faith in our fellow humans, right? Well, I wanted to follow up on that conversation because I just found a perfect example of something that just irks me. And that's a so-called expert, a voice of authority, who's really a BS artist. I have a friend who I may have mentioned a time or two before. He loves to go against the grain. He loves to be provocative and take positions that are outside the box. He takes a lot of pride in that, of going against the crowd. And as such, he finds sources, talking about finding sources you can trust. He loves to share his sources. But everybody he shares seems a little sketchy. In this latest example, and I've had this very same experience a few times with this friend. And a quick little 10-second Wikipedia investigation shows that this person, who my friend is recommending, is a real outlier. He's an outcast from pretty much his entire profession. Everybody thinks he's a nut. And they cite faulty methods and all sorts of logical fallacies and the ways that he is not a serious person in the field. And for some reason, my friend just loves guys like this. Well, it happened again. And this is somebody named Steve Milloy, who I hadn't heard of before. And he claims to have coined the term junk science. That's his claim anyway. I don't know if I believe it. And he actually has a site called junkscience.com, where he claims to, it's his mission to reveal junk science, to call it out for what it is. And on this website, he has a little bio, as you would, I guess. And here's Steve Milloy's bio. It's kind of funny. Steve Milloy is a recognized leader in the fight against junk science with more than 25 years of accomplishment and experience. Credited with popularizing the term junk science, Milloy is the founder and publisher of junkscience.com, and from 2000-2009 wrote the popular Junk Science column for foxnews.com. Okay, so here's the first actual credit we have. It's all been very non-specific so far, very general. 25 years of accomplishment and experience. What? Here's the first actual credit we have, and it's with foxnews.com. He is an expert on energy. All right. No position, no title, no degree that he wants to share. He is an expert on energy, environmental, and public health issues, a public affairs consultant, author, TV radio commentator, and public speaker. All of these credits. Let me see. I could claim to be an expert, not on energy or environment, but public affairs? Yeah, I could claim that. Consultant, yeah. Author, yeah. TV, radio commentator, public speaker. I've done all those things. Are you impressed with me? You know me. I'm just that guy on the radio or on your podcast. Oh, these kinds of bios. These are such red flags, and they're so obvious. I mean, you see this, right? You're not buying this, are you? He puts up a website and then makes that one of his credits. Yeah, I've got charlesburcell.com. Charles Burcell is the founder of charlesburcell.com. and radio commentator and public speaker. And anybody, you could write one of these. Have fun. You should. In fact, as a little exercise, write yourself a bio. Just fill it full of BS. It'll sound just like this. Malloy was trained in natural sciences. Well, so was I. Mr. Metzke, 8th grade biology. Law and securities regulation. I don't know about securities regulation. I was trained in law, though. I went to school. I've been trained in a lot of things. I bet you have too. He has also been an attorney for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Oh, there's a credit. There's a credit right there. And a broker-dealer and a registered securities principal investment fund manager. It sounds like he had a job. I don't know if maybe he was freelancing. I don't know. Nonprofit executive. I have two. Steve and I have a lot in common. Let's see. Nonprofit executive, print web columnist. Wow, that's impressive. He's been a columnist on the web. Where are we? Malloy served on the Trump EPA transition team. All right. Okay. So there's this guy's bio. It's 99% BS. The only actual credits he can claim is that he worked for Fox News. At least he wrote a column, and I don't know how many times it appeared. It was popular, according to this bio. And he served under the Orange Menace EPA transition team. You know these transition teams, they go out and they hire like 100 different people. Well, they don't really hire them. I think mostly they're volunteer positions. They get like 100 different people to do a Zoom call once or twice. And then they're on the transition team. So that is one sketchy bio right there. Steve Malloy, ladies and gentlemen. From his own website. And this is just way too common. So common when you find these sketchy guys and they'll have a bio that sounds just like that. But then I was curious, so just a quick run over to Wikipedia. He's a conservative, obviously, although you wouldn't know it from the website. He claims to be above it all. If you go to the bio, yeah, you see that it was Fox News and the Trump transition. Okay, all right. Well, obviously conservative. But if you don't click on bio and check him out, if you just go to his website, junkscience.com, it looks like, oh, we're dedicated to the fight against junk science. But looking at his bio tells you maybe not. And you go a quick trip over to Wikipedia, and now you see he questioned the health risks of secondhand smoke. He fights against the scientific consensus on climate change. He fights against everything. He fights against the dangers of breast implants, mad cow disease, against corporate social responsibility. He's just on the wrong side of everything. He operates something called the Advancement of Sound Science Center, established by Philip Morris Companies. All right, so this guy's pretty obviously on the wrong side of junk science, and yet claims to, well, I could go on and on. I guess I already have. I shouldn't spend so much time on this guy. But I just find people like this fascinating. Just total BS artists, 100% political, and the nerve, the guts to have something called junkscience.com where he fights junk science and he's perpetuating it consistently. It's his whole deal. His methods are sketchy, and he is pretty much shunned by the entire scientific community. He's garbage. It's So easy to sniff out these bogus bios. Founder and publisher of junkscience.com. Yeah, I'm founder and publisher of charlesburcell.com. Me and GoDaddy. It's really quite an accomplishment to have a website. I'm sorry, we spent way too much time on this guy. Let's keep going. I shared a little something on social media I'd like to share with you now. It was prompted by just another of a long line of dumb little posts, dumb little memes. This one reads, it's by a guy named Steve Goodyear, who I have no idea who he is. I'll bet he's probably a self-proclaimed expert in something. Oh, but his wise little post that people shared. We don't get harmony when everybody sings the same note. Only notes that are different can harmonize. The same is true with people. In other words, we're all supposed to get along. Everybody's different. We all got to harmonize with each other. It takes different notes to harmonize. Meaning, I guess it takes different political views to make a society. Yeah, but this is just, it's so simplistic. It's so dumb. Especially, this person obviously knows nothing about music. You don't get harmony if you're singing in different keys. You don't get harmony if you're not on the same page of music. Only notes that are different can harmonize. Yeah, sure they're different, but they really ought to be in the same key. You know, they ought to be in the same chord. If you know anything about music, one note with another note sounds like cats screaming. You know, if you like that sort of thing, if you're into the avant-garde, atonal music, okay, good for you. But this analogy here, this little analogy, is just so stupid. Only notes that are different can harmonize. Yeah, and only notes that are on the same page, in the same chord, cooperating with each other can harmonize. The same is true with people. It's just so dumb. It's just another plea for all of us to get along. I'm so sick of it. And that's why it prompted me to write this. And I just wanted to share it with you. I'm getting really tired of people telling me to get along with those who don't share my politics. Yes, I should talk, compromise, even be friends with those who differ with me politically. But in this particular moment in history, one of the two major parties in the United States has been taken over by legit neo-fascists. They have no regard for life, opposition to COVID remedies, gun safety, health care, etc. Hate and vitriol fill their inflammatory rhetoric, and they are willing, even giddy, about their so-called Second Amendment remedies. In fact, a sizable part of their faction is actively engaged in and supportive of violent insurrection. They openly attack the rights of women, LGBTQ, black folks and people of color, and immigrants. Many are open white supremacists. Their attacks on voting and elections would destroy democracy itself. Red states are passing heinous and unconstitutional voter suppression laws as we speak. Their embrace of the big lie, indeed several big lies, is Goebbels level. They have dragged us kicking and screaming into a post-truth era. I could go on and on. There's plenty of room on the political spectrum for differences, from lefties like me to Bernie and the Squad to Joe and the centrists, even to old-school moderates and conservatives. I am more than willing to engage in a wide political debate, but the current Republican Party does not belong on this spectrum. It only belongs in the dust bin of history. So, no, I'm not going to get along with this hopeless, deplorable faction. Their ideology must be defeated, forever banished from the world, and then vigilantly guarded against. That's a little something I posted. I rarely post something like that, but I had an irresistible moment. I guess. On social media, I had to write something. So there it is. Speaking of writing, I'm going to read you something else I wrote. And I wrote this just for you. I haven't published it anywhere. Charles Purcell is a published author, a writer and commentator, a popular podcast host. Yeah, I should write one of those bogus bios. I have to go back to my website and look at my bio and see what it says. And be sure I'm not guilty of those kinds of sins. I might be. I should check that out. I'm going to do that after the show today. I'm going to check out my bio, and I think I'm going to edit it to make sure that I'm not guilty of what I'm complaining about. Okay, here's what I want to read to you. It was prompted by, Bill Maher again. On a recent program, he did this big, long rant, part of it, his New Rules segment, which is generally pretty funny. But then he says, his format, he does a string of jokes. New rule, such and such must do such and, they're funny. But then he says, and finally, now you know it's coming. New rule, now it's the big rant. And on one of his recent programs, it was about how sick he is of the left, always protesting. That America is great. America's the best. And he sounded downright right-wing about this. He's always complaining about the left. How about they're so woke and they're complaining about way too much and they get triggered. And he just wants them to shut up and realize how great America is. Well, his commentary was so flawed because it just lacked completely, entirely, any historical perspective. Young people, people on the left, people who fight in the streets, people who take unpopular positions, the activists, the protesters, they're the ones who have preserved this nation, preserved what good it has left, have made advances. Without these people, we'd still have child labor. We'd have a $0 minimum wage. They're fighting for 15. It should be 20, but at least we have a minimum wage. Women's rights, civil rights, just name it. Workers' rights. Every little bit of progress we've made has been from the lefties, from the activists, from the progressives. Without them, we'd be nowhere. And he just completely lacks that knowledge, or just doesn't see it in his rich, privileged white bubble. It's really kind of amazing. To cheerlead for America is one thing. Yeah, a lot of great things you can say about this country, mostly about the people. The institutions, the government, mostly kind of suck. So I'm the first one to stand up and say you are wrong when you're talking about the American people. There are a lot of great people who have been here and who are here presently. So I'm on that cheer squad. But that's not what Bill was talking about. No, he was scolding, which is his favorite thing to do. The guy is 60-something years old. He's white, he's rich, and he just finds it necessary to scold young, progressive activists, which I don't know how he can do that and not realize what he's doing. How can he be so unaware of his role, their role, and the complete and utter inappropriateness of his scolding from his position? It's mind-boggling, actually. So it got me thinking, and I don't know why, of the great Colonel Jessup speech from A Few Good Men, the You Can't Handle the Truth speech, where the gist of it is he's scolding from his perch. He's scolding the young lawyer played by Tom Cruise about how, you don't have the guts to do what I do. You have no idea what I do for this country, what I've done for you. How dare you question me? And so this is the speech rewritten from the point of view of protesters and activists who are really doing the work. Remember, he says, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall, Jessup says. Well, the protester, the activist says, you need me out in those streets. I'm the one who's doing all the work. and you're the one benefiting from my work, and you don't even appreciate it. So that's where I got it. That's where the idea bubbled up. So here it is, the You Can't Handle the Truth speech from the point of view of the protester delivered to the smug Bill Maher. You can't handle the truth. Bill, we live in a world that has injustice, and that injustice has to be fought by people with new ideas. Who's going to do it? You? You, Greg Gutfeld? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You cry for personal freedom, and you curse the activist. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know. That what you call cancel culture, while inconvenient, probably saved lives, and my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me in the streets. You need me in the streets. We use words like justice, peace, progress. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide and then question the manner in which I provide them. I'd rather you just say thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a sign and march. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. So that's the famous speech from A Few Good Men, tweaked just a little bit to portray the point of view of the activist, the protester, talking to people like Bill Maher, who are scolding the activists and the protesters, especially the young ones and the people of color, just to shut up. America's great. Well, what else have I got for you today? Are you good at taking advice? Well, there's a story I saw recently in Wired about a climate crisis and our role in it. But this was a new study specifically about communication. The headline, "Want some eco-friendly tips?" A new study says, no. No, you don't. And it turns out, according to these researchers, we don't respond well to advice regarding our personal relationship with the climate. We don't respond well to scolding or to shaming, which a lot of this communication boils down to. And this article, and I've seen others in the same vein, and this particular study, this tests my ability to trust science. It doesn't align with the way I'd like to think about the world. This tests my limits here. Because, as we've pointed out many times, and the research tells us, people don't want to believe science and research if it doesn't line up with their predisposed notions. So here's my challenge. My predisposed notion to give facts. You know, I'm kind of with Greta Thunberg when she stands up and she rails, "How dare you?" to the world leaders. But the researchers keep telling us the same thing, that doesn't work, to shout and scold and shame when it comes to climate change, that facts don't even work. See, I'm not much of a scold. I guess that can happen occasionally. But mostly, I want to believe that if you give people facts, if you can make them understand things. All the research says I'm wrong, and I have such a hard time accepting that. This particular article, just another of many I've seen telling me I'm wrong. This study tells us that, this was at Georgia State University, they did this study, surveyed nearly 2,000 people online to see how they would respond to different messages about climate change. Some saw messages about personal sacrifices, like using less hot water. Others saw statements about policy actions, like laws that would limit carbon emissions, stop deforestation, or increase fuel efficiency standards for cars. The messenger, whether scientist or not, didn't make much of a difference. The respondents didn't like being preached to, didn't like learning new facts, especially if they were asked to make any sort of personal sacrifice in their lives. Very poor response. Talking about the environment is tricky. The research tells us that carefully crafted messages are important. People are always saying things like, if only there was more communication about climate change. No. It's the kind of communication you have. And their bottom line is, you got to make it fun. You got to make it sexy. You have to flatter your subject. You have to make it fun for them. And I can't tell you how many different articles, opinion pieces, research studies I've seen that come to this same conclusion. And I just I'm resisting this with my last nerve. I'm a textbook example of someone with predisposed notions of reason and facts and persuasion. And I'm resisting the research. All of it tells me I'm wrong, and I'm having such a hard time accepting it. So if I want my daily messages here on this podcast to get across, I've got to somehow convince you that it's in your best interest and that this is going to be fun for you and sexy. Boy, I better sit down with my consultants here and retool the whole thing, the whole operation. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you don't want advice from anybody, apparently. All the research tells us this. Nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody wants facts. Nobody wants reasoned argument. Nobody wants to be persuaded of anything. You just got to be flattered and cajoled. You have to find how this is fun for you. I just have such a hard time with this. The research tells us we can't stand up and yell anymore. We can't make arguments. We can't demand. That the only way we're going to get change is to trick and cajole people into making it fun for them. I can't. I just can't. All right. Well, let's call it a day, shall we? This episode and all other episodes can be found at charlesburcell.com, or go to your favorite platform, wherever you get your podcasts. Just a reminder, when you do that, put Charles Burcell in the search window. That's how we're searchable. You find all the titles. And while you're out there on the interwebs, check me out on Facebook and Twitter. Love to hear from you there. Please do share the podcast. That's how we distribute. That's how we get out there, is when you share. Thanks to River West Radio, our flagship terrestrial station, riverwestradio.com. And thanks to Peter Donalds, who composed and performed our theme song. All right, there it is. I love you. I'm Charles Burcell.